I traveled to Zimbabwe a few years ago. My husband's a pilot, and we travel a lot. And I went to Zimbabwe, and I've shared many, many times that, when you go on vacation, there's just something about being away from your cell phone and being away from communication and whatnot. You're just in a quiet place, and I just kind of feel myself personally. That's where God kind of speaks to me in a very unique way when I'm out of the country or out of the state. And I went to Zimbabwe, and one of the places that we traveled to was Victoria Falls. There are so many amazing lessons from the way Victoria Falls was designed, how God created it, the purpose behind it. I mean, we could go into a whole day on Victoria Falls and how it demonstrates the amazing way that God uses us and works in us. But at the end of the journey at Victoria Falls, there was this one moment that I just kept coming back to as I was thinking about Rebecca's story. I was thinking about us wanting to flourish today. Victoria Falls has, obviously it's a river that comes, it finds the edge of the river, and the drop is so significant, and the power behind the water at this point when it drops is so significant and so strong that when the water falls off and hits the ground, the impact of the water onto the water behind it is so dynamic, I guess, that the water bounces back. I shouldn't even call it bounce, jumps back. And it makes this spray that goes anywhere between 60 to 240 feet up in the air. That is a very, very large spray. This water hits the ground and it just bounces back up. And what happens is Victoria Falls is obviously just a massive, massive, massive wall of water. So imagine all of this water falling down and hitting the ground and then spraying back up 240 feet in the air. Now the ground above it is not 240 feet, it's less than. So the water, the spray is going far higher than the ground. When the water, the spray gets up, it comes back behind the falls onto this piece of land that is behind Victoria Falls. And this area of Victoria Falls that's behind where all this spray comes has become kind of its own unique place to visit. Because the water never stops flowing at Victoria Falls, right? Even in the drought, let me tell you, even in the drought, water never stops flowing at Victoria Falls. So the water never stops flowing, and it comes to this place where it hits, it sprays, and the water comes back on the ground behind it. If the water never stops flowing, that means the spray never stops happening. That means this water is constantly going to the land behind it, and the land behind it, it's rain, right? It's rain. So this spray comes up and becomes rain, and this whole grassy area behind Victoria Falls experiences rain 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365 days a year. It never stops raining in this area of Victoria Falls. It's like a 2-mile garden. It's actually its own unique ecosystem, and there's no ecosystem like this any place else in the world. It's tremendous because when it never stops raining, there are things that grow in an environment where it never stops raining that cannot grow anyplace else. There are plants in this 2-mile range that can't grow anyplace else. There are actually insects that can't thrive or survive anyplace else because they need the non-stop watering all of the time. We can flip it around to say other things will die out. Right? There are other things that will die out because they can't take the water all of the time. When we are women who are in position to flourish and we do what God has called us to do, we are going to be a well-watered garden. And there is no better well-watered garden on the planet than this area of Victoria Falls. We are going to have God's love, God's rain, God's Spirit pouring into us constantly, 24/7, 365 days a year, 7 days a week. Things will grow in us that can grow nowhere else. And other things that should not be growing will not be able to thrive. Why? Because the Spirit's presence is flowing nonstop. What does the word say? Isaiah 58:11. The Lord will guide you continually. He will give you water when you are dry, and He will restore your strength. You will be like an well-watered garden, like an ever-flowing spring. Do you want to be an ever-flowing spring? Do you want to be a well-watered garden? I want to be a well-watered garden. So what am I going to do? I'm going to stay in the position where God has me in order to keep flourishing. Look what happens at this journey. Rebecca has just done everything God has called her to do, and she comes to this place. She shows great respect and submission to this man she's not even married to yet. And if we go to verse 67, Isaac brought Rebekah laughter, brought captivating into the tent of his mother Sarah, and he married Rebekah. She became his wife, and he loved her. And another translation says, he loved her deeply. And Isaac was comforted after his mother's death. Can you imagine? Rebekah is being taken to the home of a stranger. She has no idea where she's going. It would have been good if she had just gone here and they got married, there's an arranged marriage, and they got along. I mean, that would have been good, right? But the very first day that they met, the Bible says what? I kind of tried to emphasize it. He looked up and saw. She looked up and saw. And the end result was he loved her deeply. Again, let's remember, this is not just a story about a man meeting a woman. It's not just a story about a woman getting married. This is a story about a woman taking her place in the kingdom. And when she looked up and saw, she was deeply loved.